Arkansas might not be the easy win that Tennessee fans were hoping that it might or could be, but if Tennessee's defense is able to disrupt the game, and especially the offensive line the way they were able to do so against the Oklahoma Sooners, then starting 2-0 in conference play could very well be the reality Saturday night. I'm Paige Dower. This is the Field Pass. The bye week for Tennessee football is officially over, though the rest coming at a good time for the team. Coach Josh Heupel mentioning earlier today that he was able to get some quality time with his family during the bye week, but now they're able to shift their attention to the Arkansas Razorbacks, who will be a quality matchup on the road on Saturday. The team able to get to the practice field and be able to get out on the grass over the last several days. Coach Heupel mentioning that it's been really quality practice, even calling it crisp. So when we heard from Dylan Sampson earlier today, I had to ask him, when Coach Josh Heupel says that you had a crisp practice, what exactly does that look like?
Just locking in on the details, you know what I'm saying? You can obviously tell the type of energy we'll have from the moment we'll step out there. And, it's never about how you start practice, but how you finish, but you never want to get behind the 8 ball. So just taking from the meeting room, minimizing MAs. The less whistles you hear, the less stuff we got to repeat. The practice is going crisp,
And that's certainly one of the messages from Coach Josh Heupel week in and week out, is their ability to be intentional in the way that they practice and to finish strong in those practices. And that's definitely a mindset that they'll need to continue heading into Arkansas week, because the Razorbacks, they're led by a very strong quarterback, kind of more of those dual threat quarterbacks in the run and pass game. We saw him capitalize on that in their game against the Texas A&M Aggies. But also in that game, we saw a couple of times that there are some cracks in the Razorbacks offensive line. We saw it at the end of the first half. Taylon Green flushed out of the pocket. He's scrambling, tries to throw across his body to kind of get it downfield. Instead, it's intercepted by the Aggies. We saw something similar at the end of the second half. The Razorbacks had just converted a 4th and 1. They're at the 34-yard line, and Taylon Green is flushed out of the pocket. I believe he's rolling right, and he is sacked from behind. The ball comes loose, and the Aggies are able to recover and essentially drain the clock to preserve their lead and go on to win that matchup. Being able to exploit those cracks in the offensive line will be incredibly key in this game, not because they're going to, blitz and try and get the quarterback as quickly as they can because they understand he can run, but it will be because they have to be disciplined with their eyes. You can't necessarily follow the player, whether the quarterback, running back, or the wide receivers. You have to follow the ball, because it's what happens after the snap that ends up becoming really important. And we even heard Coach Josh Heupel talking about, all 3 levels of their defense have to be on their P's and Q's. So I asked, Keenan Peely, one of the leaders on defense, a linebacker for Tennessee, how important is his role and his ability to continue this level of production that we've seen through the first 4 games of the season? How important is that when they get to Arkansas? And you got to make sure that he and the rest of the defense have their eyes in the right place. And Heupel will just continue to reiterate that it really will come down to all 3 levels.
All 3 levels of the defense got to be tied in together. Your first and second level in particular got to do a great job of bottling them up in the run game. But when he drops back and pass, rush integrity, that can be off your pressures, it can be off your twist game, it can just be a base 4-man rush. You got to push the pocket, you got to make them uncomfortable. At the same time, you got to keep them bottled up.
Arkansas really is kind of middle of the pack in the SEC when you look at the offensive and defensive stat lines, but I don't want that to take away from the fact that they really have been just a couple of plays away a number of times from actually being an undefeated team up until this point. And we mentioned it in their Texas A&M game, where they were trying to mount a game-winning drive, and a mistake by Taylon Green, cracks in that offensive line, actually ended up in a sack fumble recovery, and then that kind of just negated everything that they were trying to put together. But what it'll come down to is, you hear Josh Heupel talk about all 3 levels of the defense. A lot of that actually might come down to the linebackers as they try to prevent these explosive plays that Taylon Green has mounted a number of times. And it's really important, and Heupel mentioned it time and time again, to not allow Taylon Green to escape.
Quarterback runs, it's read game, which can be first or second level reads for him. It's when plays break down. He's got the ability to escape, outrun people, get outside of the pocket, and make plays. And anytime you're facing a quarterback that's that dynamic, that is, where the game starts for you defensively.
Now, of course, that's a lot easier said than done, but Tennessee being able to prevent Taylon Green from having these chunk plays, from allowing him to not be able to dish it off or dump it over to a wide receiver, is really making sure that you have not 11 hats on 11 hats, but you have 11 hats on the ball, just because of how dynamic of a player Taylon Green is and how they operate that off.
Extremely important when it comes to football. I mean, one guy not doing his assignment can turn into a huge explosive that changes the way the game is played. So at the end of the day, we got to be able to play with 11 guys doing their 1/11th, and we'll be all right.
And a fun fact for you, Keenan Pili has actually played Sam Pittman's Arkansas Razorbacks back in 2022 when he was with BYU, and it was a home game for Pili at the time. And the Razorbacks, Sam Pittman's Razorbacks, they absolutely routed BYU. So there's a sense of this bad taste still in his mouth. So I'm sure, speaking for Keenan here, he's probably looking forward to going into Sam Pittman's home and returning the favor, now wearing the orange and white.
Yeah, super excited. Obviously, last time I played with them, it left a bad taste. They had a good game plan. And you can tell they're a very well-coached team. I think at the end of the day, very disciplined team, and they got coaches that put the players in the right positions to be successful. And I think that I'm looking forward to that matchup, excited what we can prepare for and be.
So, of course, as Tennessee turns its attention to the Arkansas Razorbacks, that first key to the game, like we've talked about all game, is that Tennessee defensive front, their linebackers containing the quarterback. He does a great job running the ball. These run design plays, you're not sure whether after the snap he's going to keep it himself or dump it off to one of the skilled players. So having 11 eyes on the ball at all time will be really important for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Someone who has that scrambling ability can also throw the ball downfield, right? You got to be good in coverage. Players that are on man, stay on man. Players that are trying to get to the QB, you got to do a good job corralling.
We'll have much more coming up on Tennessee as they get ready for the Arkansas Razorbacks on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we'll hear from the Lady Vol basketball team, also Rick Barnes's Volunteers. We'll have a recap from both of those press conferences, and we also have access to their practices this week as well. So definitely make sure to subscribe to make sure that you're not missing out on any of that content. But until then, I'll talk to you Tuesday about Tennessee football, Wednesday about Tennessee Lady Vols and Vols basketball. Talk to you guys then.